For more on this, we're joined by Greg Svensson from London. He's an international affairs expert. Greg, many thanks for your time. Just give us a sense of how significant this failure is, particularly given the attention in the UK over defence spending at the moment.
Yes, I think it's more of the second part of your comment. It's just an indication of the lack of credible commitments to keeping the Navy in Tier 1 form. And whereas I don't think the failure of this particular Trident missile, and as you know, it happened previously in Theresa May's administration a few years ago. I don't think that's in itself a big problem. I think, this was just, an unfortunate mishap, but I think it points to the bigger issues, which they'll be addressing in the House of Commons today. And it's not just the Navy, it's also the Army. In 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, there were 153,000 British soldiers in the Army. Tony Blair brought it down to 110,000. David Cameron, this is both parties. David Cameron brought it to 87,000, and now he's the current foreign minister. And then the plan is to get it down to 82,000, and many expect it's really realistically it will be closer to 70,000. So this is not a good moment for both the Navy and the Army. And the other point you made, which is really important, is the relationship with the U.S. Navy. And unfortunately, the United States is going through the same problem. They're shrinking their fleet to it'll be down to 286 ships by 2025, by next year, while the Chinese are ramping up to well over 400 ships. So this is a problem for both the U.S. and the U.K. I don't think the U.K. necessarily has a lock on this. Yes, they need to, I think, upgrade the Navy, make a bigger commitment to it. But this is a problem for both the U.S. and the U.K.
And obviously all this is coming at a time of extraordinary geopolitical tension in the world. Do you get the sense that perhaps we are on the verge of a pivot where defence will become more of a priority? I know you're talking about the downgrades in defence capabilities, but actually, is there an argument now for some political parties to be arguing the opposite?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that's a really good point. This might be the wake-up call. This kind of mishap, and also you had the NATO exercises, Operation Steadfast Defense, the other day. That was in some ways a demonstration of the ability of NATO to get together and defend, but it also turned out to be an indication perhaps of its weakness. So this might be the moment where parties on both sides of the aisle, both right and left, decide that it's time to upgrade. We haven't seen that yet. The President Biden, unfortunately, cut the defense budget 3% in real terms. And then you had, I think you had some of the news coming out of the NATO exercises suggesting that I think the West really needs to reposition. Right now, the British military can't really be considered Tier 1. The only Tier 1 militaries in the West right now are the U.S. and France. And I think, the UK is looking more like, Germany and Italy. This is by no means a criticism of Grant Shapps, the current defense minister. This has been going on for a generation. So I think that you need to really, make a renewed commitment. You're seeing it with the other NATO countries. We can expect that the countries that are now meeting their obligation of 2% of GDP, that's at number 11 out of the 31 countries. That's probably going to get closer to 20. You've seen a commitment from the countries that have not been meeting that goal. The UK is somewhere between 2 and 3%, depending on the numbers that you look at. The US is dipping below 3%. That number should be 5 to 6%. We'll see that hopefully from a Republican administration in the U.S. To get that commitment back to 5 to 6% of GDP. But right now it is completely inadequate on both sides of the Atlantic.
Greg Svensson from London, many thanks for your insight.
Thanks for having me.